Hello again and welcome to Stop the Press. I'm Rob Chadwick and I am a lecturer of journalism at Exeter College. I'm here with Nick Copson, who was 20 years in the business in marketing, in journalism. And I'm here with Bill Martin, who was 35 years working as an editor on national and local titles. Good afternoon, people.
Hello, Rob.
Good afternoon, Bill. I'm Rob.
I should say this is the second episode we've recorded on the 23rd of February. There's been so much happening in the news that we wanted to do two episodes. Our previous one, which hopefully you all heard, was about the Andrew Mountbatten Windsor affair, and we might come back to that at some point or other. And this one, there's three things that is on my agenda, guys, and it is the hacked off trial, where the co-claimants are Baroness Doreen Lawrence, Liz Hurley, Elton John, Simon Hughes, Prince Harry and Sadie Frost, and they're suing the Mail because the Mail apparently were hacking their voicemails and landlines, etc. The second thing I wanted to talk about was Labour Together funding and the fact that Labour Together, which is the organisation that got Keir Starmer into power, was investigating a Sunday Times journalist and trying to decry his name rather than taking responsibility for a payment which they hadn't declared. And the third thing was the BBC's Winter Olympics coverage, which we'll put at the end. And we'll just have a brief chat about that. So let's start with the hacked off story. So we know that it's those people who are basically suing the Daily Mail. My question would be, there's two outcomes to this: the Mail win or the hacked off people win. Oh, and Prince Harry's one of the defendants as well, and is going to be in court actually testifying, apparently.
He's done it. He's done his evidence.
Oh, he's already done it, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Had another whine about how terrible his life is,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
despite living in California.
And wanting to live it privately.
And living privately, yeah. But in the public eye privately, obviously. So there's two outcomes. Either the Mail loses and the hacked off people win and that they end up having to pay them lots and lots of money, or the Mail win and the hacked off people end up having to pay all their legal costs and et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. What happens if the Mail loses? Do we end up with more press regulation? And is that a terrible thing, bearing in mind we are in a period where Jeffrey Epstein, a member of the establishment, has got away with all sorts of crimes for years and years and years. Don't we need as free a press as possible in order to make sure that those people are held to account? Are we worried about the hacked off trial, would be my question.
Well, I'm not worried about the trial. I mean, I think the trial is ridiculous. I think some of the claimants have been ridiculous. I mean, it comes down to one thing, doesn't it? Was the Mail acting illegally or not? I don't know the answer to that. And from the evidence which I've seen at the trial, not sure anyone really knows. Certainly, there will be people in the Mail who know,
of course,
and I'm sure the trial will find that out. Your other question is, do we need more press regulation? Well, absolutely not. I think we could possibly do with even less in some cases.
I agree.
I think some of the work the press has done over the last 2 or 3 decades, whether that's expenses, whether it's Epstein now, whether it was indeed the Mail's investigation into Stephen Lawrence's killers, I think they've been such a force for good. And I know I'm always a great defender of the press, but bottom line, what we need in the press, whether it's print or digital, is responsible and good editors who take responsibility for the behaviour of their journalists and their investigators. Not all editors are going to be like that. I think there's, in the whole phone hacking scandal, there's been evidence where things have gone badly wrong. Was that the case at the Mail? Paul Dacre says no. Liz Hurley says yes. I don't know. But I mean, I think some of the stuff we've seen in court recently has been quite unedifying and a bit sad. But number one being Prince Harry,
It does seem like he's kind of just sat there and said, and just wheeled out his grievances in a public place, as if it's almost a cathartic experience for him rather than a trial.
I think there's a bit of that.
Oh, I think the press...
He's got a massive axe to grind, hasn't he?
Like in lots of, blaming the press is easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Harry, he finds it easy to blame the press for everything that's gone wrong in his life.
Yeah.
Because that's easier than taking responsibilities for some of the own decisions you've made. And you could see when Harry gave evidence, you can see what I saw anyway, when he was surmising here, is quite an unhappy person, still traumatised a bit by the loss of his mother. And in all of those situations, and I mean, I was a journalist covering when she died. That was one of the biggest stories I've ever covered. And the press were blamed. I can remember, even here in Plymouth, I can remember, we sent photographers and reporters to go and take pictures of the flowers outside St Andrew's Church, things like that. And people would actively shout at us and abuse us and say, you should be bloody ashamed of yourselves, as if it was our fault, that St Diana had hung. So blaming the press is it's always been it's the press's fault, isn't it?
Yeah.
Truth hurts.
It's not the press's fault that Hugh Grant was with a prostitute and ended up in jail, was it?
No.
Absolutely not. Hugh Grant, who's been absolutely, at the forefront of the Hacked Off campaign, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And his claims, he feels very, very aggrieved about what's happened, and how he's been treated in the press. But I think it actually you're right, it goes back to that Divine Brown scandal, doesn't it?
That's the name I was looking for, Divine Brown, yeah.
I think that was long before people started hacking his phone.
It was way before,
were, wasn't it?
Yeah, he just took umbrage to the fact that he ended up on the front page with a mugshot, basically, didn't he?
Well, it stings a bit, doesn't it? I mean, he was one of the biggest stars.
It's embarrassing,
He was
isn't
one of the biggest stars in the world.
Yeah, he was. He just hit the high, hadn't he? And
it's not hurt his career, though.
No, he's managed it very well from that point onwards.
Yeah,
he has. Going back to the Daily Mail, I mean, I'm aware of what's happening. My understanding of this is that the Mail must be pretty confident they've got a case that they can win, because they probably would have settled some of this out before it even got to court.
Everyone else has.
Yeah, if they thought they were culpable. So I can only assume they're willing to go to court means they think they can win it, and I hope they do in many ways. Because, just to your point, you don't want more investigation or scrutiny on the press.
I think if they lose, I think there will be calls for more press regulation, and I think that can only be a bad thing.
Well, I think there is already, isn't there? And there will be certain sections of that campaign who would say, despite the Leveson inquiry, nothing has happened. But ultimately, it's a free press, and I'd say in the UK we probably have one of the freest. In the world, it's absolutely essential to the way our democracy works and how we live our lives.
It's more important than ever.
And sometimes it's uncomfortable. You just got to get, you kind of got to get used to that. And even at at local level, right at the early days of my career and things like that, you'd have prominent local businessmen saying, "Oh, you can't put the fact that I've been banned from drink driving in the paper; it'll ruin me." Blah blah blah. Well, the press has a role to play in publicising open justice and that sort of stuff. It's the, you can't blame the press for you being drunk at the wheel of the car.
No, and actually, the press needs to report that because people need to see that justice is done to everybody. It's even more so when it's a prominent local businessman than it is than whatever his name is in the street, because you need to see, because there is a perception that if you're rich, you can get away with stuff. And so it needs to be seen that you can't. And actually, the Epstein scandal, coming back to it, would suggest that actually there is still an establishment that can get away with stuff. The amount of redaction in the Epstein files suggests that they're still getting away with it.
Yeah, 100%. And, that's why when Andy Windsor was arrested last week, after my initial sort of blimey shock, I was sort of like, I felt, oh, well, good.
Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah, it's good.
Good. About time.
Yeah, exactly.
And it shows the press kind of are doing their job by reporting it properly. And I do worry that if this Hacked Off campaign wins, we end up with a situation where the press become too nervous to actually report the things that they need to report.
A bit like in America.
Yeah, and we end up with basically some stuff on the edge of the internet, on social media, or even further out on the internet, which people aren't really sure whether to believe or not, etc., etc.
And to Bill's point, what does it do for democracy down the road? You know, if the press can't hold people to account because they're too afraid of being sued or, you know, legislated in some way, what does that do to democracy? You know, what does it do for the power brokers who are in charge at the moment? Does it increase their influence negatively?
Yeah.
Because there's no one going to challenge them on it.
I think as well that, you know, we're seeing this, you know, there's sort of two bits of the press, aren't there? There's the sort of traditional press and some of the more established names within the digital media and that sort of thing, who I would say are still pursuing proper journalistic aims with proper and thorough journalistic values. And then you've got social media or whatever it's called now, whatever some of the platforms out there, you know, which is absolutely the Wild West, isn't it? You know, people are publishing
anything,
whatever they like. You know, AI created images, stories. I mean, you can prove anything online these days, can't you? And find pictures of anyone doing anything and that sort of stuff. So even more so, you know, we need this sort of, you know, there's enough press regulation out there to make sure that serious editors with the right ambitions and the right journalistic practices in their newsrooms are carrying out their jobs in a professional and thorough and responsible and legal way.
Do we think the drive for clicks might mean that is compromised as well?
I don't think, you know, whether it's clicks or sales, it doesn't matter. And it used to be for sales, wasn't it? And, you know, I think some of the things that went wrong in the phone hacking scandal and prior to that, you know, were down for, you know, it was very, very competitive, the drive for sales in the 80s, 90s and the early 2000s, wasn't it? So I think some people did some things they will probably regret, but, you know, that's down to individual decisions that people have been held to account for. You know, they've either been sacked or fined, or has anyone been sent to prison? I'm sure they have.
Well, I'm sure. Well, I don't know whether people ended up going to prison for the hacking campaign at the Sun in the end.
I think some of the investigators did.
Some of them did. Rebecca Brooks did she?
No, she didn't.
Nothing to do with her.
Less said about that. She didn't know.
Didn't know.
No. Not a single ounce of knowledge she had of that situation.
No idea. And we wouldn't say differently.
No. I believe her completely.
But if I was an editor and I didn't know my journalists were doing that, then I would see that as being a fail on my part.
Yeah.
You know, and I in my view, if she didn't know, she should have done. And, you know, well, she should.
Yeah, of course. Well, she no, I better not say it.
But categorically, she didn't know.
Yeah.
Nor did Piers Morgan.
Categorically, she says she doesn't know. Yeah. Just out of interest, just as part of the phone hacking trial, I think the complainants have made a massive mistake in that Max Mosley's organisation has funded a number of payments for the people who are testifying in favour of the people who are complaining about the Mail. They're not directly saying testify and here's some money. They're saying here's £75,000 for a book deal or here's £25,000 for a book deal. And it just happens that those people are also testifying that there has been phone hacking, etc., going on. I think their whole case is compromised because of that. Because if you're paying people to sit there in court, well, you're not paying people to sit there in court, but if you're giving people large sums of money and they just happen to be on your side in a court battle, that is going to compromise your case, isn't it?
And that's probably why the Daily Mail are willing to go to court with it.
I would have thought so.
I mean, that's the sort of evidence that in an American, you know, sort of legal thriller would completely crash a case.
It would. Yeah.
If you get £75,000 from so-and-so, oh, yes, I did. Well, that's it. And the jury goes, and the whole case collapses. You know, it's a murky. I mean, you get into some of the detail of some of the people involved, the investigators and who was working for who, and nobody seems to have a clear record about who did what. You know, it's murky, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've little doubt it was going on. It's just I don't think you can prove it.
Well, we know it was going on in some forms, don't we? You know, and we know that investigators were doing it. You know, that's been proven. The Mail's saying they weren't involved or it wasn't being done on their watch. Fair enough. I've got no idea whether it was or it wasn't. But people, the Mail has been paying people for stories for years, as has every other newspaper. Some people are uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
Some people would say, well, that immediately compromises the integrity of a story. If X, steps forward and says, oh, well, so-and-so did this to me and it was outrageous, blah, blah, blah. And then it is revealed that the newspaper who's publishing that has paid her £100,000 for the story. You're kind of like, well, does that compromise the story? It's very common, but...
Would you get the story without it? That's the question, isn't it? And, if someone's going to pay, then you've got to pay, haven't you? Otherwise, you don't get the story. That's the truth of the matter, isn't it?
Well, definitely now, because people have realised that you can be paid.
Yeah, exactly.
To tell a story. So,
yeah.
But, it's a murky world there. But, I mean, presumably, without getting into the real detail of the trial, the evidence will, support whichever way the court finds it. That's, the court will go on the evidence. And then, but my hope is that the hacked off litigants don't win.
Yeah, same here.
Same.
I mean, so in summary for that bit, we are basically saying we're on the Daily Mail side. I hate saying that, but I think we are on this occasion.
Unless they're breaking the law.
I think I'm on the side of the Daily Mail anyway, because I don't want any more regulation of the press.
Yeah, well, here to that.
Yeah. Okay, second thing I wanted to talk about was the Labour Together scandal. And what this is an organisation was formed back in the late 2010s to try and get Labour into power and to sort out Labour and make it...
To save us all, Robert.
To save us all, to make it a more centrist party, to get it away from the grasps of Corbyn, etc., and make it electable again. Okay? That organisation was funded to the tune of £730,000 to £740,000 by a raft of donors. And that organisation was run by Morgan McSweeney, the guy who has just resigned from the Labour government. The raft of the raft of donors doesn't really matter. There are names which I didn't recognise when I looked them up, so we won't go into details. But the fact is that if you get a donation like that, you have to declare it to the parliamentary authorities, and thereby it's all part and above board. Labour didn't do it. The Sunday Times investigated it. They found that Labour didn't declare this donation. And rather than Labour saying, OK, that's fine, what they did was they hired a detective agency to look into the backgrounds of the journalists who did the investigation into Labour Together. And that detective agency then started pushing out information which suggested that Gabriel Pogrund, the journalist from Sunday Times, was somehow a Russian spy, a Russian plant who was trying to undermine Labour and the whole project. Okay, and that's just come out recently, and Morgan McSweeney is clearly implicated, and so is various other people within Labour Together. But Keir Starmer is standing back and saying, I didn't know anything about it. Even though I got in on the back of this organisation, I had no idea about this. I had no idea about £730,000. I had no idea about anything. It's nothing to do with me. Nothing to see here, Gov. So I just wanted to ask, firstly, if a political party is trying to investigate the press to try and undermine the press, are we in a position where we just can't trust this political party anymore? Has Labour overstepped the line to such a degree now that we just need to say, right, that's it, Labour, it's time for an election? What do you think?
Well, I don't think it's quite reached that stage, has it? I mean, this was the least surprising political scandal, to me anyway, over the last few months, in that, guess what? Someone gets caught out doing something they shouldn't have done, and who do they want to blame?
The press.
Funny.
Yeah.
Funny. And it goes back to what we were just talking about with Prince Harry, doesn't it? It also doesn't surprise me. You've got, a cohort of undoubtedly very self-righteous and very convinced of their own rightness. People in Labour Together who couldn't believe, that someone was kind of challenging their mission to save us all from the evil Tories.
And the evil left wing of the party.
Yeah, and the evil left wing of the party. It's classic, isn't it? It's,
yeah.
It's back to the old blame the press thing. He must be being paid by the Russians or something. It's ridiculous.
It is unbelievable, isn't it? And they're saying, well, we paid them to investigate where the leak came from. But APCO, the company who did the investigation, are not that type of. They're not a financial investigating company. They are a private detective agency who go around looking into the backgrounds of people. Yeah. So, that just doesn't ring true as being their rationale either. What do you think, Nick? What do you think about the idea of this?
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and also I think it's alarming that Sir Keir Starmer can sit there and say he didn't know anything about it.
Well, he may not have done.
Well,
might be like Rebecca Brooks.
Yeah. Well, if he's like Rebecca Brooks, then he's definitely in trouble.
The thing is, if he didn't know anything about it, he's just as culpable.
Well,
because he should know about it.
That's what I'm saying.
He should have done. But it's quite possible within the workings of an organisation like that he didn't.
He keeps saying, I don't know anything about this stuff. He keeps on saying, as if he's got he doesn't take any interest in anything at all other than just going out and shaking hands with people in factories.
But that's a politician's, it's a classic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nobody knew that, he didn't know that he was wearing free clothes.
No.
Angela Rayner didn't know she hadn't paid her tax,
Peter Mandelson couldn't recall the £75,000 donation.
Yeah, I know.
of all the things that the government's got to deal with, I think this like pales into insignificance for me. But your question was, should there be a general election? I think you said.
Yeah.
I think yes, there should be for lots more reasons than that one.
I think if you're going to, I think this is a major crime. I think, we can laugh about it, but I genuinely think that if you're trying to undermine the free press to that extent, I genuinely think this is a very worrying thing. This is like Middle Eastern government behaviour. This is Iranian behaviour. This isn't just like something we can shrug off, I don't think.
Yeah, but it hasn't worked, has it?
No.
And again,
but the very fact they're trying,
you go. But lots of people are trying to do that. We've got that going on with the Hacked Off trial now, and you've got, there are that action and the motives of particularly the celebrities involved in that is not just about the legality or the illegality of the investigative methods that went on to get those stories out. If you see the evidence of Liz Hurley or indeed Sadie Frost, you can see that there's just more to their general sort of anger about what's been printed in the press than actually the how the stories are actually collected.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And also, there's I don't know, but there's probably all sorts of things that parties do to try and win an election. And
management in the press is very high up on that list.
Correct, and it's higher than ever before. Illegal. I don't know, Rob. I don't know. I haven't got a strong opinion on this. I'm willing to dismiss this a little bit because it hasn't worked. Because Labour are on the ropes anyway, and I don't really want to put any more attention onto the inner workings of the press.
Fair enough. So the final thing we're going to...
Sorry, I forgot we're here to provide content. Sorry.
Yeah. Saying I don't know is not acceptable, guys. You're here for your opinion. So you say I don't know too many times. It's irrelevant that you don't know. You're here for your opinion.
I just offered it.
So the final thing is the Winter Olympics coverage. And my question was going to be, and I know Bill's answer is going to be no, but my question was going to be, are the BBC just rubbish at sport these days?
No, they're brilliant at it. Absolutely brilliant at it.
So, I watched a reasonable amount of the Olympics. I didn't watch an enormous amount of Winter Olympics, but it got my goat a little bit because they kept on doing things which were there to try and grab the attention of people who aren't interested in sport, like children's TV presenters having a go at some of the Winter Olympic sports. It's like John Noakes on Blue Peter and stuff. And showing pictures of people's cakes about curling in the middle of the final and stuff. And it just felt to me like dumbing down sport to try and desperately to get an audience of people who just aren't there. If you're going to do sport, appeal to the people who are into the sport. Don't worry about the people who aren't.
They've got a new director of sport chap called Alex Kajelski, who was, I think, editor-in-chief at The Athletic.
He's the culprit, is he?
Well, possibly, and he's the guy obviously who binned off. His first ticket was to get rid of Gary Lineker off Match of the Day.
Okay.
So he's of a new breed of sports people. I've no doubt there's a whole bunch of journalists and content producers in the BBC who are obviously, presumably, Generation Z. And they're working to a new remit, I suspect, that's different to ours, Rob, our viewing habits.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with either of you.
Okay, sit up and tell us.
Well,
I'm on about Bill's microphone technique, by the way, people.
If the BBC was simply covering, what's it called, women's half-pipe acrobatic skiing, for those people who are interested in it, they're playing to an audience of about 150.
True.
That's not their job. Their job is to cover the Winter Olympics. Now, when you take on was it 2 or 3 week outside broadcasting responsibility like that, two things. One, you've got to explain those sports to some people.
Okay.
And I bet you didn't even understand the ins and outs of curling before.
I still don't really.
Yeah, exactly. And two, there's going to be a lot of filler.
True.
There is going to be a lot of filler. Now, you talk about showing pictures of people's cakes during the curling, but that was actually a piece of journalism to reflect how curling had captured the public mood in Great Britain, which it had. Perfectly acceptable.
God, there's a journalist for you, isn't there?
Perfectly acceptable.
I didn't watch any of it, frankly, and I don't know if their coverage was good or bad, but
it was fantastic.
I think all I'm saying is they're operating now to a different brief than they perhaps were 20 years ago, right? Their core audience has changed. The sport that they used to cover terrifically, they've now lost due to budget. So they're just, I don't know what their brief is, but it'll be a different brief than it was 20 or 30 years ago. That's all I can say on it.
And I'm just being a curmudgeonly old man who wants things how they used to be, yeah?
But I don't.
We all are.
Yeah.
I want it like it used to be.
Steady on.
The other thing that's got my goat while watching sport on the BBC is on the Champions League highlights, where they do the little bit of social media content with the sights and sounds from around Europe, which they've just grabbed some stuff off social media, which every time they show it, I think, why is this on there? Just show me 30 seconds more of highlights.
Well, I haven't seen that, but, part of the magic of sport, isn't it? And we are lucky, I think, most of us, in that we've probably all been to watch sport in places where we want to go and watch it. Whether you've travelled abroad to Europe to watch football, or I've been to the Caribbean to watch cricket, whatever. We've been lucky to do that. If you've never done that sort of thing, and the broadcaster, whether that be the BBC or Sky, is giving you a flavour of what, I don't know, Latvia is like, or I thought the BBC, some of the shots from the ski resorts in Italy, none of which I've ever been to, it's made me want to go there. It's so beautiful. And the way it was filmed, I thought it was fantastic. So, it's not just about showing sport, is it? You're covering an event now. And sport is not just a game. It's not. And that doesn't matter now, whether that's curling or football. It's a very emotional... and we get very invested in it. And I got very invested over the last 2 weeks in sports I'd never even heard of.
It's amazing. You become an expert, don't you?
Yeah, I want to take up ski mountaineering.
I love curling every 4 years. Curling.
It's amazing, isn't it?
For 2 weeks, I love it.
It is amazing.
I hate it after that.
I love it. It's great. Yeah,
it was boring after that.
Yeah, exactly. The interesting thing is, I think I read, and I've got it in front of me now, but I think I read that the BBC have chosen not to send any teams out there to America for the World Cup, Football World Cup.
I read that.
Until the quarterfinals, I think.
Yeah.
Hedging their bets that obviously England get to the quarterfinals.
Yeah. No, I read that.
That's a hedge.
Yeah.
It's a really good. I mean, and what's funny is they've been criticised for that, and then they got criticised for sending 300 people out to the.
I know they can't win.
It's
like
honestly.
Well, they got people like you moaning about them or their magazine content, but I remember. In the cricket, when it first came out, that some of the commentators weren't actually at the ground.
Yeah.
And I can remember some of the commentators being a bit uncomfortable with it because they're actually sat in a studio in London watching it on TV and commentating from there. But actually, if that in the long term, that continues, proper coverage of sports, whether that be cricket or darts or whatever, and it makes it more affordable, it makes them competitive, it hasn't made a lot of difference to the coverage of the sport
And I think maybe you don't. I think maybe you don't need to be there for cricket. It's useful to be able to see what's going on in wider reaches of the picture, but
I think they've always got someone there, and I think, it feels like Jonathan Agnew's always there, and he very poetically describes the ground and the city and the atmosphere and that sort of stuff, and that's really important to any game, I think.
Whereas I think football,
but you don't need
got
60
to be
people
there because you've got to see what's going on over there when the cameras are pointing over there. So there are some sports I think you probably need to be there to commentate, but you don't need to be there to do the summarising and stuff. And I think from what I understand
and
of
the
the
punditry
BBC,
and that sort of stuff,
they're sending out the commentators, but the pundits are staying over here,
So the highly paid pundits, by the way, of course, the commentators will be paid probably far less than the pundits.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look at the best sports programme on TV, the Saturday afternoon thing on Sky.
What's that?
That Paul Merson's always
Soccer
on.
Saturday.
Soccer Saturday. Brilliant. That's just people like us, sat with headphones on.
Used to be brilliant.
Watching football on TV.
Now.
Here we go. Come imagine it again. Used to be brilliant. Now they've got people who don't know about the game talking about it.
We're not going down that road. I so want to go down that road, but we're not.
Yeah.
Definitely not. No.
Yeah, okay, I'll take it back then. They're all right, I suppose. Yeah.
I won.
Well done, Bill. Yeah. Well, I still think I'm right about Cliff Richard at Wimbledon. I don't want to see it. No one wants to see it.
No one
don't
wants
show
to see
it.
that, no.
And all of that stuff.
Yeah, but then again, you've got to put yourself back into what was happening at the time.
Rain.
Yeah, it was raining. It was actually quite a cool moment. He had one of the biggest pop stars in the world.
Well, he was practically royal family.
Correct. And he used to go out with Sue Barker.
Yeah.
Stood up and started singing. It was incredible.
And Wimbledon is an institution, isn't it? I mean, it's unique in the world of sport, isn't it?
He hates that as well.
I don't like Wimbledon. I hate all that. Oh, isn't it great? Murray Mound, Henman Hill. Oh, God, it's just a bunch of annoying middle-class people being annoying, isn't it?
No, I love it.
Yeah, I know.
love it.
I know.
I love Wimbledon.
I know.
Yeah, and I love Claire Balding.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
I'm trying to be more tolerant recently, so I'm going to just say, yeah, okay, fair enough, I'm wrong. Yeah. We'll be back with an episode about photojournalism in the not too distant future, and also another one where we catch up on the latest on the Andrew affair and probably a bit more about the Hacked Off and Labour Together and just catch up on the headlines and stuff. Thank you for listening on this occasion. Do email us at stopthepresspodcast@gmail.com and we will answer questions and stuff, and we may even have a guest or two coming up. There's a few people being in touch and you never know. So anyway, until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
And me.